Okay. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the May 1st Howell Township special meeting, primarily to deal with issues related to the proposed 2007 municipal budget. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the appropriate statement?
Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this special meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner: by the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on April 25, 2007, by the faxing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press and Tri-Town News for publication on April 25, 2007, by the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's office on April 25, 2007. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with 3 emergency exits for your safety. The locations are as follows: upon exit in the meeting room, to the rear there, to your immediate left and immediate right, and at the front of the meeting room to the left of the dais. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Roll call: Mrs. Dalton? Here. Mr. Howell? Here. Mrs. Showmaker?
I believe we expect her here shortly.
Mr. Walsh?
Here.
Mayor DeBella?
Here. All right, Mr. Chernetsky, I believe we do have a reason to go into closed session. Is that right?
Yes, personnel and contract negotiations and litigation.
Okay, Ms. Woolman, once again, the statement, please.
Whereas Title 10, Chapter 4, Section 13 of the New Jersey Revised Statutes require that the public shall not be excluded from any meeting of a public body unless a resolution authorizing such exclusion is adopted at a public meeting. Whereas the Township Council of the Township of Howell has determined that such a closed meeting is required to discuss certain matters which are exempted from consideration with the public in attendance under New Jersey Revised Statutes 10:4-12. Now therefore be it resolved by the Township Council of the Township of Howell that the public shall be excluded from the next portion of this meeting, and that the Township Council will reconvene in public session thereafter. Be it further resolved that minutes will be kept of the meeting in closed session, and the time and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public cannot be determined at this time.
Can we need a motion and a second, please?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. Okay, we expect to be out hopefully within 45 minutes. Is that a reasonable amount of time? Yeah. All right, we'll be back in public as quickly as possible.
All right.
You are, okay. All right, we're going to reconvene the meeting back to order. Thank the public for their patience with us. The council had some business needed to be tended to in closed session. We do need to have a Pledge of Allegiance, so everyone please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask that we all just please remain standing for a moment in the silent observation of the troops that continue to defend this country all over the world. Thank you. All right, I believe we have some public hearings to dispense with. Public hearing on ordinances. The first, I call everyone's attention to 00717. And I'll proceed as follows. Ordinance 00717 was introduced and passed on first reading on 4/10/07 and published according to law, and it's now being taken upon for further consideration in a public hearing. Affidavit of the publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 4/13/07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building in the Township of Howell, and the copies were available to the general public upon request. Ms. Woolman, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, Monmouth County, New Jersey, amending Chapter 306 entitled Towing of the Code of the Township of Howell in order to amend, supplement, and revise said regulations.
Okay, I'm going to open up the meeting to the general public. Anyone who'd like to make comments for or against this ordinance, please come forward.
Mayor, there are just a couple of typos, too, that I'd like to point out before we vote on it.
Terrific, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Smith. Just please introduce yourself for the record.
Don Smith, 54 Vanderveer Road, Howell Township. Speaking tonight really on behalf of the Environmental Commission. We met this past Friday. Joe from Al's Auto Body was present, and we discussed this ordinance with the Environmental Commission, and they authorized me to speak on behalf of the commission tonight. The part we have a problem with is the business with the concrete storage area. On the face of it, it sounds like a nice environmental deal. But as we think about it, it's more like a knee-jerk type of thing. In light of the area that you would have to cover with concrete for a storage area, the cost would be prohibitive to the average tower. What about the tower that leases land to store the vehicles? Who's going to provide the concrete? The owner of the land or the tower himself? Along with the concrete, you have to put in a wastewater or stormwater management facility to handle the contaminants that might get on there. Now, I worked in the field for 33 years with one particular dealership. They had a body shop, a licensed body shop. And periodically, the DEP would come down, or quite often the insurance carrier would come down. And they'd go to the edge of the pavement, or they'd go around the building, and they'd take soil samples and do an analysis. And when they got a hit on chemicals, you were in trouble. You had to do the cleanup as they directed. So there is actually a policing mechanism in place now. And as we talked about this, we figured, you know, if you impose this cost on the tower, especially when it comes to the impounding of vehicles, when they're towed for the police, are they really going to go with that, or are they going to tell the township, well, you know, then you have an impound yard? It would be more realistic as far as I'm concerned, and what we felt would be to ask the tower what provisions he would take to provide protection against oil spill, because there are other means available. There are absorbent blankets that can be used. They work very well. They don't absorb water. They only absorb oils or antifreeze. In fact, they work so good, they separate the water from the antifreeze if it drips through. There's drip pans that can be used. But I just feel that this is an awful burden to put onto the tower. And in itself, concrete itself isn't going to do any good. You've got to take care of what gets on the concrete. If it's flushed off onto the ground somewhere along the line, you've still got the same problem. Has anybody checked into what other towing or not salvage yards, but towing facilities, what they do with their yards? The ones that I'm familiar with, like Freehold Towing, a very large one, they're not on they don't store on concrete.
Mr. Chinesky, did we do
Sure.
exploration of other municipalities that you can comment on, please?
Sure. I just offer two comments. First, the ordinance that council approved at the end of 2006 simply stated that storage facilities must be paved or concrete, period. So you see that in the line above that discussion. What the ordinance calls for now, to put a little more teeth in, or provide a little more clarity, it says that new storage facilities authorized after January 2007 must be paved or concrete. Any new storage facility of this nature is going to require a site plan review where those issues are going to be addressed.
Yeah,
The runoff issues are going to be addressed for compliance with stormwater management regulations. So the next question was what do we do with pre-existing facilities. And at this stage, in discussing it with the attorney, this is really the best we can do, is to require existing storage facilities to go get a site plan review before 2009. And we don't provide any more details because it would all be dependent on which zone they're in. And so it would be a matter that they either work out with the planning board, or if variances are required, to go to the zoning board.
You know, the way I see it, this is going to put a lot of them completely out of business. And when you take a body shop, for example, they're licensed by the state of New Jersey. They're already very well covered as far as protection of the groundwater. I mean, the DEP monitors them. When you get into some of these outfits that may just strictly tow and store and have no other licensed business on the property, that may be another subject altogether. But I really would rather see the tower be asked what means he would use to prevent pollution of the ground, because he's the one that's eventually going to be responsible for the cleanup, and just ensure that it is an acceptable means of protection. And otherwise, I think what you're going to end up doing, you're going to end up having to have a municipally owned and operated impound yard. And I don't think the township wants that at all. But that's really all I have, and I'm sure you're going to hear from some of the towers. But I just wanted to give you the input that the Environmental Commission had after talking us over for probably about an hour and a half Friday night.
Thank you for your comments, Mr.
And I thank you.
Mayor, if I could just offer one more thought. That, you know, this was 10 years in the making, I believe, this ordinance, and so we're visiting it for a second time, and you know, there's no reason we can't keep visiting it. What I might suggest, if there's an interest, that this falls out of Chapter 188. So the planning board, Mr. Smith is right. We're not giving any direction to the planning or zoning board for looking at these things when they do come in. So I think it might make sense to provide some general criteria for pre-existing towing yards to comply with this ordinance, to put that into Chapter 188.
Okay. Who else would like to be heard on this particular ordinance? Any comments? Any other member of the public who'd like to make a comment? Yes, sir, come on up.
Yes, my name's Bob Bradley,
Good evening, Mr. Bradley, welcome.
from Bradley and Sons Towing. And I was listening to the meeting the other day about the paving of the firehouse on Kent Road, the First Aid Building. And they said that's going to run somewhere around $100,000 or $120,000.
That's correct.
I mean, you know, for us to go through that, there's not a tower in town that could afford to do that. I mean, the reason I have a yard in town is just for a police tow.
The only clarification, I think it's a point worth mentioning, because it might clarify part of the issue in their cost, is that a large portion of their land had never been paved, it's dirt.
Right.
So one of the reasons why they're facing a larger expense is that roughly half the property is currently just dirt and gravel. And so they need to have that leveled, graded, and paved for the very first time. I couldn't tell you anything about paving costs, but one of the reasons that number is so exaggerated is that they're literally doing something for the first time for a big piece of their land.
Right. I don't know what it would cost to go through the planning board and the site planning and all this other stuff. I mean, like I said, I have a yard in town just to tow for the police. That's all I use the yard for. And I'm sure that, you know, all the other towers is pretty much the same. And, you know, the cost to do that is just, you know.
But Mr. Chudinsky, if I understand this, from a pre-existing perspective, what would someone who currently owns a lot be required to do? They have to go out and pave?
There's no requirement for existing lots at all,
Right.
but under pre-existing lots, but for new applicants,
So for a new applicant, but if you
Right.
already own a lot.
Yeah, but this is up until when? What year? In 2 years? We're
yeah, Mayor, this is a requirement to tow for the town. you know, and it's the town standards that we're trying to put in place, and certain environmental standards we want to see met, or presumably that the council wants to see met.
Okay. Mrs. Dalton, you had a question or a comment?
Yes. Pre-existing towers are going to be required by January of 2009 to go in front of the Planning or Zoning Board for site plan approval if they don't meet with the criteria for being paved or concrete, correct?
Correct.
And you've already said that the criteria isn't in here, the guidance that the Planning or Zoning Board needs.
That's correct.
So, I mean, as of January 1st, 2009, if Mr. Bradley's lot is not paved or concrete, he's going to have to, pursuant to this proposal, he's going to have to get that place paved or concrete.
He would have to develop a concept plan, present it to either of the boards, whichever he's directed to by the land use office, and they would have to just review it and make suggestions. They'd have no guidance upon which to make any requirements.
We let a
You have a question,
comment
Mrs. Schilling? Sure.
in? No, just a comment.
Yep.
Could we, perhaps, for existing businesses, and maybe the Environmental Commission may answer this, would it be a possibility that, and I don't know if this has anything to do with our new stormwater or waste management, wastewater regulations come into play, because I think that's somewhat coincides with what we've been mandated, and I don't know how this segues into that. However, would it be possible for the existing businesses to be grandfathered so that they do not have to pave or concrete, however, be have to be compliant, I guess, with the DEP's regs. However, whatever they say for that existing business, so as not to put someone out of business because of the cost factor. However, new businesses would have to comply with. Is that a possibility?
I think the answer is we have, from a legislative perspective, it's within our jurisdiction to amend this law any way that we feel appropriate. I don't know that there's certainly, at least in my judgment, the DEP has a regulation. It would always preempt and supersede whatever we did or didn't have.
Correct.
So if you want to change what that criteria is, it strikes me that, absent Mr. Chinesky correcting one of us or correcting me, it's probably council's preference.
Perhaps a simple addition would be this. If that last sentence were to read, storage facilities authorized before January 2007 do not comply with the requirement above must obtain site plan approval from either the Planning or Zoning Board by January 1, 2009, which shall review the plan strictly for compliance with DEP stormwater management regulations.
That certainly seemed, which they'd have to do
So it gives them
anyway.
to 2009 to go before the board, and then the board would just review them for nothing other than compliance with what you indicated.
Okay, question for you. Why would they be required to go before the planning board or the zoning board for compliance? Isn't there something else they have to pay that fee to do that, to find out if they're compliant? Wouldn't they have to be under the regulations of the DEP because of what they do already? You don't know.
I don't know.
I can see that on your forehead.
But I think this gives, you know, this tool is intended primarily for the police department. So they know that they're following the wishes of the town in authorizing towers.
Mhm.
So, you know, really, what you say here is what you're telling the PD to do. You know, or do you want to authorize towers? Do you want our police to verify that there's compliance before they authorize a tower?
Or why don't we, I think this is an issue we probably should debate, maybe after we get to
Well,
the public.
there's
hearing.
only,
Something else,
there's
Mr. Paul?
only 2 yards in the whole town that have pavement in the yard. And there's only one that's being used right now.
Go ahead, Ms. Dalton, sure.
My thoughts on this particular section is, we originally said storage facilities must be paved or concrete. That was the original prior council's approval in December. I mean, I think that if the issue is whatever existing facilities have, you know, being grandfathered in, we take care of the grandfathering in the first sentence of the proposed ordinance in that paragraph. If we get rid of the rest of it, and, you know, then we don't have the prior existing facilities having to do anything other than what they're already doing now. If they're not complying with the DEP, state, or they're going to be,
That's your point.
I mean, I think
That's
we're
my
saying
point.
the same
Mhm.
thing.
Yep.
I don't think we need anything besides the first sentence.
All right, why don't we continue to hear public comment in case there's anything else that we may want to also consider alterations. Anything else, Mr. Brady?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank
Can I
for
ask
your
a
comments.
question of him,
Go right
please?
ahead, Mr. Walsh.
Right now, do you every year have to meet DEP requirements?
Well, I rent space at County Line Auto Body, and he is required by the DEP. I mean, he's inspected by them, and
Every year? I'm just asking.
I believe every year, right? They come down. I mean, body shops, they're pretty tight on body shops. You know, they inspect it, see what they do with all the thinners and everything they use.
Separators.
But I've been there for probably over 15 years. And like I said, I mean, I pick up cars for them all over the state of New Jersey, and I would say maybe 5%, maybe 5% have paved yards. And I'm talking about the whole state of New Jersey. I pick up cars daily throughout the whole state. And I mean, it's really unheard of. I mean,
Accepted for concrete and pavement company.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms.
Can I just ask we're talking about yards for storage of towed vehicles. We're not talking about junkyards, correct?
That's
Or
correct.
incorrect?
right,
Correct.
correct.
They
There's
can
a
be-
difference between a junkyard and a
Storage facility.
storage facility.
That's right.
But they
Not
may,
that there's anything wrong with junkyards,
right, but they might have commingled operations.
but if they have
Well, everything's
commingled operations, then it
between
would be a
repair shops,
junkyard.
body shops, junkyards, everything has to be towed there one way or another. I mean,
Mayor, here's my only concern with repealing that or removing it, and, you know, even with respect to extending it to compliance with DEP. Just hypothetically, there's a spill, there's a contamination, you know, and we, the township, get named or included in any sort of cleanup because this was a place, in all due respect to the existing towers, I'm not casting dispersions on how they run their shops, just speaking hypothetically, I'm sure that our policies, what we have on the books and our practices would be something that would be looked at if we were included in any sort of contamination issues, because we've authorized the facility. And those are our vehicles that are our responsibility there.
could I ask you a question? Then? I mean,
Right.
I've taken cars to the police impound right here, which is a dirt yard. I mean, totals. I mean, it's the same. It's no difference than any other storage yard. You know, the police impound yard.
Well, if this ordinance comes into place, then that's going to be expense of the township, because we have to abide by the laws also.
Right.
Is, Mayor,
Go ahead, Mrs. Truman.
is that a requirement under the stormwater regulations that our facility be paved? Where did that come from?
I will tell you that as long as it's our facility, I am very certain that that requirement would exist at some time within the next 4 to 5 years. Maybe 2 to 5 years.
I was just gonna
2 to
say.
5 years, maybe sooner than that.
No, if this ordinance goes in, it's going to be by 2009.
And so by implication, if we don't, because really, we don't operate a storage yard. I mean, we have like a small fenced-in area for unique situations and our own equipment, and it should be paved. But we essentially have privatized this operation, given the size of our town, and I think by extension, that liability goes with us, and that requirement goes with us, which is why I think the police officers who initially drafted this included that language.
All right, thank you, Mr. Brady. We're certainly, obviously, going to continue to debate the issues you raised.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this issue? Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Joe Pereira from Howell's Auto Body, right here in town.
Always good to see you, Joe.
I have a few issues that I agree with what Mr. Smith had said about there are other ways to contain spills. There's a few things that I'd like to discuss. I'm concerned about in Section 5, Section 30619. There's A and there's C. Each permittee will submit on a monthly basis all vehicles that have been held in their yard for a period of 30 days or more to the police department. I have no problem with that. That's okay. The police department will make the final decision as to which type of title will be applied for. Now, if you jump down to Section C, removal of vehicles and all fees incurred with said removal shall be the responsibility of the permittee, i.e., removal of stored vehicle to a salvage yard. I'd like to ask Mr. Chernietsky a direct question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Go right ahead, sir.
Under the New Jersey Motor Vehicle Commission, 39:10A-3, the definition of a junk titled vehicle is this: that such vehicle is incapable of being operated safely or being put in safe operational condition, except at a cost in excess of the value thereof, which to me means it would cost more to fix the car than what it's worth. Can you here this evening satisfactorily say to me that not all vehicles, not every vehicle that this so-called auctions that we're going to have by the law are not going to all be junk titles? Because I can give you an example of a car that was a junk title. It was a Chevy Lumina Z34 that was towed in for an impound that had a flat tire. The car only needed a tire, and they got a junk title for it. This car could have been turned into a good car back on the road for the price of a tire. Can you say to me this evening that the township is not going to get all junk titles, or if they're going to get junk titles, where they are appropriate? Because if they do that, the township could potentially lose out on an income over and above the bill of the tower if they continue with only junk titles.
I would not make any representations tonight to that question.
You would not make any representation?
No, I'm just I'm not prepared to answer that. It's not an issue you and I talked about over the many hours that we met.
Yeah, I think in fairness, Chair, that was a pretty technical question. I don't know how Mr. Chernietsky would be able to, sort of on the fly, be able to understand the complexities behind what you pose.
Yes, sir.
Certainly, we'd be happy to look into it. I mean, clearly, honestly, you know this.
Yeah.
We'll get you any answer. I think if that's something that you could either put in a quick email to the manager, type
mean,
it up,
the reason
give him
why
a
I'm
call,
saying
I
it-
think we'd be happy to get the answer for you, but
The
I just
reason
don't
why
know
I'm
what we
saying
got
it is
tonight.
it could potentially, if they're good, clear titles, which in this case that I gave you, the car should have been a clear title, the township would have the potential, because the way it's written, any monies over and above the bill would have to be turned over to the township. And if there were any, the township could have potentially profited from a clear title on the car.
Mayor, if I may say,
Go right ahead, sir.
what I will represent to you is that I have an open door policy.
I know
And
that.
I'd be more than happy to meet with you if you think, or any resident thinks that we're losing out on any revenue. I'm certainly going to make myself quickly available.
Well, I'm
to
not
talk
trying.
about that.
I understand you're trying to put a little, but what I'm trying to say to you is that a lot of these cars that are being impounded, is that's the problem that we have, and that's why this is disposal of abandoned vehicles or unclaimed vehicles, whatever you want to call them, is that a lot of these cars they're being driven on the road, and they are good cars. And the person who could make the determination would be a person such as myself, who has the credentials to decide whether the car is good or not, who could appraise the vehicle. I have credentials that only 244 people in the state of New Jersey carry, last time I checked. Now, that's why I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to say to you that I want to be assured that when a clear title is appropriate, it will be obtained. That's the only thing. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Tom.
All right, no, I understand, and I appreciate.
Just
what
asking
you're
that
saying.
question, and I did tell you that I was going to ask you that question.
Ms. Dalton, you had a comment?
Well, I think that the question is really, what Mr. Perez's question really is, it goes to paragraph A of that section, section 5, is really who says the car is junk, and what is the criteria, and is it the police department? In other words, I think there's a concern on the part of the towers that if it's easier to just, from a paperwork perspective, do a junk title, we're going to see more junk titles than, because our police are already overburdened with many other duties and tasks. So,
And the only cost difference there is $1, whether it's a junk title or it's a good title. There's only a difference of $1. That's it.
So is it your recommendation, are you finished, Ms. Dalton? I'm
well,
sorry.
I don't, it's been a while since I reviewed the statute. Once the determination is made, clear title or junk title,
That's it.
the disposition of the vehicle changes. Am I right or wrong about
Yeah,
that?
once it's declared junk, it's junk.
It's junk.
Done.
But once it's declared clear, it has to go to auction.
Mayor, I don't know if this has happened in the past, but, you know, I haven't received any complaints that this is happening. And perhaps and this is the current practice with
Well,
respect to
my
police.
next question, not to cut you off, is, that is the,
Then don't cut them off, please.
I'm sorry. You done? I'm
Well,
sorry.
no, I'm not,
right.
but thank you. Mayor, so I think my point is you know, this has been the current practice. It's being brought up as an issue. As you can see, other than getting people together to talk about this, it's not that difficult to amend these things. But you know, I mean, that, to me, it sounds like this is a separate topic that needs to be studied, along with the storage facilities.
Mhm. All right. Did you have further comments for us?
That
on
is
this?
all. Thank you very much.
That's it? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else who'd like to be heard on this particular ordinance? Seeing no one else, I'm going to close the public portion and open up debate among the council. I think there are two issues we've talked about here tonight, to paraphrase. The first being the application of a grandfathering provision potentially with respect to existing businesses, and do we simply require them to comply with whatever the DEP suggests that it is, A, making them go to the appropriate board and have that validated, or B, simply require via ordinance that they must comply with the DEP, or some other compromise. And the second issue being the one we've just talked about, which is the determination of when a vehicle is considered a junked vehicle, and do we have appropriate criteria that delineates that so there's not any ambiguity. So why don't we, do you have any comments you'd like to offer, Mr. Janetzky?
Mayor, I would think with the first one, if we were to remove that sentence, I think that would mark a substantial change in the ordinance.
I think whatever we do, we have to come to grips that this is going to have to get, unless we accept it as is, and it's something minor typos, it's going to have to get re-advertised because it would be a substantive change.
Only to say that if we added the language that the planning board will review it for compliance with DEP stormwater management regulations, it just puts a finer point on what we're trying to achieve.
All right, let's hold that thought right there. Let's just take a quick consensus on what's on the table. Do we want to, rather than mandating they have to put concrete, that by '09, they must present to the planning board that they meet the requirements of stormwater management? Ms. Dalton, we'll start with you. Is that a compromise that you would accept?
No.
Okay. Mr. Howell,
Yes.
you would accept that? Mr. Walsh, would you accept or reject that compromise?
I have a difficult time with the cost of the concrete and.
Well, they wouldn't have to, under this
Yeah,
compromise.
But but I have a difficult time with that. I think we could find an alternative to that would be both the benefit to the town and to the towers. So I would be for amending it.
Okay, so you'd be a yes. Mrs. Showmaker, to amend it to require planning board validation without specifics for concrete.
Mr. Chernitz,
Go ahead.
Tom, if I can address you. And refresh my memory, where did the must be paved and concrete come into play here? Was that, I think I've asked that before, does that have to do with our stormwater regulations? Are we going to be required? Is that going to be a requirement of existing businesses as per?
I'm going to guess with over 90% certainty that we looked at, the police looked at other codes in other towns. And most towns that aren't our size have their own facilities. And so they, so they're sensitive to having it paved and complying with the stormwater management regulations.
Okay, I don't, and I mean no disrespect to the police department, but I'm not sure that I would be as confident going by what the police department are saying about other areas. I probably would feel more confident if it came from the township engineer, because he's kind of walked through the stormwater management transition over the past 2 years. So maybe I would perhaps like to see what Bill has to say in respect on that number 2.
Okay.
If that,
Can I say something else, Will?
Go right ahead, Mr. Walsh, of course.
If the state changes 2, 3, 4 years from now, we can always amend the ordinance, could we not?
correct.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mrs. Showmaker, you're sort of, on this particular issue,
I'm
not to-
teetering,
You're
yes.
teetering.
I'm teetering.
All right, and I would be I'd be a yes, that I think that amending it so that the planning board reviews it and we just make certain that they're up to speed with the DEP, doesn't require them to put concrete down, doesn't require them to go to any other measures than the law would already require them to. I think that's a reasonable compromise, and it protects the environmental interests of the town.
That's one thing this board has to be cognizant of, that it's our responsibility to be, comply with what DEP and our wastewater, our water sources. So that is the one thing that I want to make sure that is the reason behind some of these things.
Well, on that score, and I don't know, I know you're still mulling
Right.
it over, I think we probably have 3 votes, or it sounds like we have 3 votes, that would be an acceptable compromise. So, not that we can't again revisit it. I think the second issue, just for the sake of expediency, is the issue dealing with how do we determine and what criteria do we need to have to make the judgment of is it junk or is it not a junk vehicle?
Mayor, if
Go
I
right
may.
ahead.
My question, and I don't know, Tom, I don't know that you can answer this tonight, and I don't know, maybe one of the towers can answer this. Do you have to have what are the guidelines to that? And does that person have to have a specific license to be able to determine whether that vehicle is junk or, or can anybody do that?
My understanding is that many of these things are covered under NJSA 39,
I have that out in my
colon
car,
10A,
too.
which is the last point in the ordinance that says nothing contained herein shall supersede that law. But more specifically, I can't answer your question. I don't know what the qualifications would be, other than the police officer in the traffic safety unit that we charge with
Let me
implementing
ask
the
you a question,
ordinance.
though. I mean, today, somebody has to make this determination.
Police
Yes.
department does.
Traffic
And the
safety.
police department is making that determination.
Yes.
So what my recommendation might be, in light of the comments that we received, is that this is probably sort of an informal dialogue that maybe the wreckers with the manager have with the police department, with the Traffic Safety Bureau, to talk about fine-tuning what those procedures should be in the event that there are some best practices. But it doesn't sound like this law is either changing, amending, or creating any ambiguities around the fact that an appropriately qualified professional has to make that determination, which is what the law says now. And if we have concerns and we want to tighten that up, I think it would be in our best interest to take the feedback of those professionals in that industry in conjunction with the manager and the police. So is there something from a legislative perspective that we need to amend, or is this just sort of an administrative housekeeping issue that we would deal with as an aside, whether or not this was on the docket or not? And I would ask that rhetorically. I don't.
Well,
Go ahead, Mrs. Sherman.
I'm not comfortable with that, only because we are putting that verbiage in there. For some reason, it says in here that it's the police department's final decision. Has it always been the police department's final decision? And does that verbiage have to be in there? If in fact we are going by, nothing contained herein shall supersede NJSA 39:10A. I mean, why isn't just that statement in there? And why do we have to have A in there?
Yeah, I don't know if it's, I know as a practical matter, it's the police department's decision. And this applies to non-consent towed vehicles.
Right.
So it's not all vehicles. I know it's the practice. I don't know if it was in the previously amended law.
Okay.
These are recommendations from the police department, correct?
These are our recommendations from the police department.
No offense to the towers, but I feel a little bit safer with the police making that decision. You know, no offense. Yeah, I mean, because they are the ones making the decisions now, correct?
Correct.
And we'll be keeping it that way?
Yes.
All right, so are we, what's the consensus of the council? Do we want to, are we okay with the wording as it is? Or is someone like to entertain proposing something alternative? Mrs. Schomager, did you want to make a specific? Go ahead, Mrs. Dalton.
Well, I think that what the town manager is saying, what the idea is that if 6 months from now, the towers come back in this ongoing dialogue and say, you know, more of these Chevy Luminas are getting flat tires and junk titles than clear titles, so that when the vehicle is sold at auction, it yields a higher bidding price, a higher selling price, and I can get my storage fees and my tow fee paid, and the town can earn some money on the excess. If the towers say that that is happening, it's definitely something we'll have no choice but to revisit, because, you know, respecting the decision, and I'm sure if the traffic safety officer is the one looking at vehicles and making decisions, there's no real incentive from a paperwork point of view to make it one way or another. And it is in the interest of the town and everyone. It's good recycling. It's a green attitude toward things, that we're going to know about that, and we'll have to work with the manager and the towers to figure out a way to improve the criteria. I'm comfortable with this language and handling it and see how it goes into the future. So I would have no problem with us approving it, subject to, as with any other ordinance, our ability to look at it and review it. I'm a little less comfortable with the other proposed amendment, because I think that if we just hand these things off to the Planning and Zoning Board and tell them to review for DEP compliance, I'm afraid of additional fees and costs and things turning into Planning and Zoning Board hearing nightmares. And I mean, I want to know what we're going to do to make sure that doesn't happen.
You know, may I suggest, we are preparing, the deputy manager has gone through the entire code book. And what we're doing is we're pulling out all the fees for everything. And we are saying see Addendum A. So we can update that every year. In some municipalities, they adopt very specific fees for planning board reviews of things that the council wishes them to do, churches, scout groups, very unique things that are in your ordinance that have nothing to do with Chapter 188. So you're requiring this of towers. You can also require that the fee shall be for a review X, Y, or Z, with no escrows. I mean, because this is as much about our protection as it is theirs. So when we do the fee ordinance, we can include that in there.
And I think that we should do, if I may, I think that that's something that we need to coincide with that and not drop the ball so that it doesn't occur, you know, when they're time, because time flies by very quickly. Before you know it, it'll be time for that, and we will never have done it from the dais. So if that's really truly what the sentiment, and that's my sentiment are the fees that are going to be incurred on coming into compliance. We just need to take note of that so that we do that in conjunction with this ordinance. In respect to the junk titles, my only sentiment on that is that it's my feeling that when we were in that meeting, and you were there, Angela, that most of the titles that were already being processed were just, in fact, that junk titles. That was what I received
Right.
from the room.
Me
So
too.
I can understand the concern of the businesses out there. That's why I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, not that I have any disrespect for either party, the police department, but was the sentiment in the room when there was a round table, indeed, and I know one of the officers did speak up, and he gave kind of, he said why they did them the way they did them. So it's my sentiment from that conversation that most of the titles were being junk titles, regardless of what they were.
I think we've actually closed we closed the public portion, so we're gonna keep going.
I think I have an issue with the junk title or clear title. Are we at any kind of liability then if we allow the tower to get a clear title and then they auction his car off after the township paid for the title and somebody gets in an accident because the
Can I
frame
answer that?
split?
Only,
You want to comment, Mrs. Dalton? Go right ahead. Just to make sure
the
we-
tower doesn't get the title.
No, we do.
And then once the public sale occurs,
Right, my concern is if we make the wrong determination and say, okay, this car is not junk, it's a clear title, and we sell it, and some kid buys the car and wraps it around a tree because part of the car was defective that we didn't catch, now the township's on the hook.
Yeah, Mr. Howell, not that I don't trust the gentleman who spoke he said he's qualified, I trust he's qualified, but when I said this is an issue that I would really need to research, that was my immediate thought as well.
Right. You know, it's just like we can't, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but with our police cars, we have to replace the tires when they're worn to 50%. We can't resell those tires, we can't sell those tires to somebody else because if they get a blowout with it, the township's on the hook for whatever, right? We just recycle the tires, we take them off the police car and put them on township vehicle,
Put it on township vehicle, yes, we do not sell them.
right? Just for that reason, because we would open ourselves up to a tremendous amount of liability if God forbid something happened.
But again, you know, it is what we do now is current practice, and if we're hearing it's something we need to look at, then we'll look at it.
and we are already doing auctions or not?
Do we do auctions? No.
So what happens with the cars once we issue clear titles?
The storage facility, I believe, owns them.
The storage facility owns them, and we're not required to auction them off? No,
Well,
we're doing all junk. That's the reason. We're doing all junk we're doing all junk because we don't have auctions. Because we're not in the habit of doing them.
Right, but we're going to get habit of doing
We're gonna get it, okay. We're gonna get in the habit of doing them, and then we'll have to revisit it and see. And is that also the reason for the list every month, on a monthly basis, of vehicles that are in the yard? I mean,
Yes.
I would suggest to the tow truck operators who are going to be operating under this ordinance that they keep a detailed list, record of the car when they inspect it. I mean, certainly, they can do a quick review and report, just like any mechanic would. Write that up and submit that with your list of cars.
All right, just to go back, I think, to retrace where we were, I think we have sufficient majority to proceed on amending this so that they need to go back to the planning board. And on the latter issue, I don't know that we have consensus, other than, at least in my own opinion, maybe I'll ask it this way. Is there someone who wants to offer an amendment to that language as it currently exists that sort of takes this out of the hands of the police and suggests something that it's just according to New Jersey statute? I mean, what's the pleasure of the council?
Mayor,
Go right ahead,
for me, I'd like to leave it the way it is, because I don't want to put the liability that the township could face on someone who's not an employee of the township.
Who disagrees with Mr. Howell? Let's go at it that way. Does anyone disagree with Mr. Howell? And I think it goes without saying that if it should be revisited administratively, so that we take recommendations from the records with the police and the manager, then I think we're open, we would always be open to that. Isn't that right, Mr. Chinesky?
Yes.
So does anyone want to offer anything contrary to what Mr. Howell just suggested?
And Mr. Howell just suggested that we would
Leave it as it
keep the-
is.
Yeah.
Leave it as it is?
In its
So if you have
entirety?
objections to speak.
There you go. All right, so are there any other comments from the council on this?
Mayor, if I can
You have
just,
something else, Mrs. Showmaker? Okay. Go ahead, Tom.
if I can, when you're ready, I'm sorry. If I can just read what the changes are going to be.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so, section B, number 2, we're going to add, at the end, comma, which shall review for compliance with DEP stormwater regulations, and the fee for said review shall be as provided in the fee schedule. And then we will include that in the fee schedule. So we know that that needs to be added. Section C, in the last sentence, the word proceeding should be changed to preceding. Section 5, just a cleanup, the first sentence should read, each permittee shall submit to the police department on a monthly basis all vehicles that have been held in its yard for a period of 30 days or more, period. And then the final sentence of Section A should read, this action shall apply only to non-consent towed vehicles, which were towed at the request of the police department.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay.
Anything else? All right, so we're not prepared to take action this evening. Do we need
Yeah, we
to?
are.
With all those
Don't we have to
changes.
re-advertise for those changes?
Yeah, but-
No, those are typographical.
So those are typographical. Okay, so we don't have to
Except,
re-advertise.
I would just note that with respect to the storage facilities, we're just adding further definition to what we intended. We're not
Great.
removing an intended purpose of an ordinance.
All right, well, we shall entertain a motion, please.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that ordinance number 0-07-17 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the May 4th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park Press by reference to its title only.
We have a motion, we need a second, please.
Second, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any final comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, I think next we have amending the land use, reserved Mount Laurel zoning district, the RMLD, rezone certain lands into certain districts. And I shall proceed as follows. Actually, I don't have the,
Here, just
can I
have-
get back up a minute, Mike?
here.
There you go, Mayor.
Thanks. I got one, thank you, thank you. That one wasn't on my
Mayor
material.
either.
Ordinance 00712, introduced and passed on first reading on
That's in my
4/10/07 and published according to law, is now being taken upon further consideration at a public hearing. Affidavit of publication of this ordinance in the Asbury Park Press issue of 4/13/07 is submitted, and it is noted that a copy of the ordinance has been posted on the bulletin board of the municipal building, and the copies are available to the general public upon request. Ms. Walden, would you please read the title of the ordinance?
An ordinance of the Township of Howell, County of Monmouth, amending Chapter 188, Land Use Ordinance to provide for a new zoning district entitled Reserve Mount Laurel Site and rezoning certain lands into the district.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to open up to the meeting to members of the general public who might like to make a comment for or against the passage of this particular ordinance. Anyone who would like to be heard, please come forward. All right, let anyone who would like to be heard. Let the record reflect that there has been no request for public comment. I'm going to close the public portion and ask a member of the council to proceed.
May I make a motion that ordinance number 0-07-12 be finally passed and adopted, and that notice of its passage and adoption be published in the May 4th, 2007 issue of the Asbury Park by reference to its title only.
We have a motion. We need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, and then finally, we do need to take action tonight on a proposed contract with the Monmouth County Office on Aging. Mr. Chinesky, would you please provide the necessary commentary on that issue?
The deputy manager will.
Mrs. Schlegel, go right ahead.
Yes, this is just a grant agreement with the Senior Center and the Office on Aging. It's just in order to accept the funds.
So nothing out of the ordinary? We do this every year?
No, nothing at all.
Need a motion and a second?
We do. We need a motion and a second.
So moved, Mayor.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or remarks? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mrs. Dalton?
Yes.
Mr. Howell?
Yes.
Mrs. Showmaker?
Yes.
Mr. Walsh?
Yes.
Mayor DeBella?
Yes. All right, at this time, we're going to turn the meeting over to Mr. Cherniatsky for discussion with respect to the township's proposed municipal budget.
Mayor-
I'm sorry. I have a proclamation that I need to read. I apologize.
It's okay.
Give me 1 second, please. Former Mayor Konopka was most gracious and kind enough to contact the municipality to make us aware. We have a resident in the community who's celebrating their 100th birthday, Mr. Ira Peavy. And as a result of that, we would like very much to, obviously, to participate in celebrating truly what is a fantastic accomplishment in surviving 100 years. And further details regarding this individual's 100-year celebration will be forthcoming. I would ask, according to this memorandum, if the clerk's office could follow up with former Mayor Konopka in the event any of us can attend. And that's the backup memorandum. And the proclamation is as follows. It says, proclamation naming Ira Peavy Day. Whereas Mr. Ira Peavy is an esteemed and honorable member of our fine community. And whereas Ira is celebrating a milestone in his long and illustrious life, that this milestone being his 100th birthday. And whereas Ira was born to the parents of Harriet and Jerome Peavy on May 2nd, 1907 at home at 345 Manhattan Avenue in New York City. Whereas Ira married his lovely and adoring wife Frances on June 14th, 1941, an Army reporter who wrote depositions for the Nuremberg trials. And whereas Ira attended New York University and Columbia University, where he studied metallurgy, and whereas Ira served in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, Ira worked for Bethlehem Steel Export Division for many years, and upon leaving the Army, and whereas Ira's dearest wife Frances passed on, never to be forgotten, later in life, Ira remarried Clara, who has a son, Robert, Ira's stepson, who now lives in Matawan, New Jersey. And whereas Frances and Ira had two wonderful and loving daughters, Nancy and Harriet, both married to Marty Shapiro and Paul Burke, respectively. They're blessed with 6 grandchildren, Julie, Melissa, Rachel, Molly, David, Michael, and 5 great-grandchildren, Marley, William, Connor, Charlotte, and Sarah. And whereas Ira was president of the Villages Condominium Association from November of 1980 to February of 1988. As an aside, we may want to talk to him about that paving resolution. He appears to have been around at that time. Not to mention his bridge club and card game at the Village Clubhouse, ongoing since before cats had kittens. And whereas Ira also served on the Howell Township Municipal Utilities Authority with distinction as Secretary, Vice President, and President from 1988 to 1992. Now therefore be it resolved that Ira Peavy has demonstrated a willingness to give of himself and to his community and his family. He's a man of extreme dedication. He's brought honor, dignity, and selflessness to our community, and that we are grateful and mindful of the fact that one person can make a difference. Be it further proclaimed that on behalf of the Township Council and myself and all Howell residents, we celebrate Ira, wish him good health for many years to come, and on this day, his 100th birthday, I, Joseph M. DeBella, Mayor of the Township of Howell, do hereby proclaim Wednesday, May 2nd, as Ira Peavy Day in Howell Township. So our congratulations go to Mr. Peavy.
Another 100 years.
Yeah, that's right.
A wonderful one.
Could you pass that down, please? All right, Mr. Chernetsky.
Okay, Mayor,
This won't
just,
take us 100 years to get through, will it?
I hope not.
Okay.
But just a couple quick announcements. First and foremost, I know Dave is upstairs, and he deserves some credit here. We are now podcasting our council meetings. You can go to our website and download our council meetings in 2 different formats.
Which is terrific,
and
we applaud his efforts.
We were able to achieve that for less than, I think, $600 a year. And also, I would like to recognize Mr. Nicastro, who informed us of a more inexpensive way of doing this. So that was great. The second thing I want to advise the mayor and council is reference to Student Government Day. Received a request today from a number of quarters to delay the 208 plan hearing. So we will be delaying that, and therefore we can move Student Government Day back here. Now there was nothing remaining on the agenda except for some housekeeping business, no hearings on ordinances, so we can continue the budget discussion on that evening as well. But we need to be in a position to introduce this budget on the 15th. And if not, then we need to have a special meeting the following week. But we need to introduce before the end of May. Is that correct, Jeff?
So you're going to continue the budget meetings next Tuesday?
We certainly can if
we can't finish tonight.
we can't finish tonight, but we will certainly devote a good portion of time to any other points council wants to bring up on the 15th.
To let council know where our timing is, there's a 28-day statutory period between introduction and adoption. So if we were to introduce on the 15th, you're looking at probably the 21st of June as the first opportunity to pass the budget. Therefore, and if we don't pass it by the end of June, we're going to affect our ability to send the tax bills out and get our tax rate certified, and that means we'll probably run out of money. So that's why timing is now becoming critical. We're going to start affecting the tax bills if we don't at least get the process finished by June.
All right, so let's proceed.
Okay. Just to demonstrate what our municipal tax base is, 3.6% of it is consists of vacant land, 82.88% consists of residential property, 1.54 of farmland, 11.96 of commercial, industrial, and no apartments. There you could see the impact of our reval. We went from 2.9 billion to 6.8 in our overall valuation. Unlike this pie chart demonstrates for how the community distributes each tax dollar. We are the tax collector for all taxing districts: the school district, local school district, the regional school district, the county, the fire districts, our own open space. This is our local purpose. Tax. What we haven't shown in the past, Mayor, on this pie chart is this little wedge here. This is the reserve for uncollected taxes. because we're the tax collector for all these other taxing districts, they expect to receive 100% of their rate. We don't, however, always collect 100%. So the first revenue item, or the first expenditure item in our budget, is what's the difference between what we collected the previous year and 100%. That makes up about 4 cents on the dollar. It's important to note that as structurally, though, as other taxing agencies grow their budget, then we have to increase this very significant portion of our own budget to make up that difference. And so this is the first year we're showing this pie chart to demonstrate our budget grows as those others grow. But in terms of our own operations, residents are paying less than 10 cents on the dollar for police, road services, park services, senior services, recreational services, and all the legislative services that this council engages in.
That's a good way to illustrate it.
That's an eye-opener.
Hey, could you go back to that again? Is that, I had asked that we always have these hanging in the hallways and all of the municipal buildings. We have to just make sure, unless the council disagrees, that we put that up again with whatever the final is, because I can't tell you how many residents call up and say, for what I pay in taxes, and I never disagree with them, but I friendly remind people that they pay about 13 cents on the dollar for the township, and it's everyone else that constitutes the lion's share. So
Right.
I just want to make sure we continue to emphasize that picture.
Right. We will.
Okay.
These are the revenues we are anticipating in this proposed budget. 5.9 million out of surplus, 0.535 in deferred school taxes, 17.9 in miscellaneous revenue, 1.7 in receipts for delinquent taxes, 13.65 in local property taxes, and 5.47 in the reserve for uncollected taxes, for a total revenue picture of $45.2 million. Although this represents recognize that this also represents growth. So it's not that last year's taxpayers will be picking up that increase in local property taxes on their own. It also represents a growth in the tax base. So that bottom line will be shown later on.
Could you go back?
Yeah, because you're scaring me.
Anyone have any questions on this page? Because this, I think, this in essence, this is the summary right here.
It gets cleared up a little further as we go along. We can certainly come back.
Does it go down?
All right, so we don't have to worry about 11% increase, because 40,400,000 to 45 million, that's about a 10, 11% increase.
Right, but there's explanations that we'll get to. Let me just point this asterisk here. Okay, what this represents is the foreclosure settlement, right? And that's then brought up into surplus. So over here, so we brought this million or so in, and then it showed again in surplus, and then it showed where it's spent later on. So you have to let me go through the whole thing.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, Jeff, will you just kind of review the surplus picture? How much we're pulling out of surplus to support the budget?
Okay, there's certain portion of the surplus that is set aside that we're not allowed to use for deferred charges and items that we have on our balance sheet. So we currently have 8.3, assuming deferred school tax again, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which we also used last year. $8.3 million in surplus on our books, of which we can only use 7.4 as a maximum. The rest has to be held in reserve. We're proposing a use of 6.9. Of that 6.9, 1.1 of that is the FEL money, that the frequency engineering money that we want to set aside for capital items. And we are actually retaining the difference, 7.4 to the 6.9. We are retaining 3% of our budget as a cash surplus. And that would fund emergency appropriations if need be. And that's a standard that the state has set for school boards, and it is a good standard to follow. It allows us to adopt emergencies if and when they should arise without having to borrow for them. We could pay for them with cash.
For the benefit of new council members, you look at this number, and you say, why can't we use all of that? There's a law that explains what you do in emergencies. It's very difficult to do an emergency, and what the state has said is, should you do an emergency like a planner to do a master plan, that for some reason that qualifies as an emergency. You have to pay that off within so many years, and you have to hold that annual payment in reserve in your surplus. So we won't even let you take that from that surplus to support your budget. So municipalities in the past used to use emergencies as a budget trick. They get away with a lower budget, then do an emergency later. By doing this, it holds the town's feet to the fire.
Now, I have one little question here, and this is just, correct me if I'm wrong, or enlighten me if I missed it. I thought we were collecting about 97.5%, 98% of our taxes. So why are we showing 96% and keeping a 4%?
That is not the tax collection rate we're showing there. We are utilizing 96% of our surplus balance. That's not the collection rate.
You're thinking of it.
But that's a good question,
That's
Jeffrey.
just our
No,
surplus.
when you go back, I saw a 4% in reserve. Okay, so that is for this?
Now, that's the reserve. It's a great point, which we have to get into. That's the reserve for uncollected taxes. This is showing our legitimate surplus.
Right.
As it relates to the operating budget.
Correct.
So if you go to the next one, in 2006, our budget resulted in, a $7.3 million surplus.
That's correct.
And what we're anticipating that the 2007 budget will yield is 8.3, but what we're suggesting is we're going to use 6.9 of that, leaving about 1.3 million in an emergency reserve, if you
That's
will,
correct.
which is your 3%.
That's the 3% of the budget.
And did we run into, I don't recall any, I sat up here, but I mean, did we have any emergencies last year that we needed to
Yes,
to
we
dip
did.
into? We did.
Yes, we did.
And what, just for everyone's recollection?
$256,000 on insurance, the workman's comp insurance. There was a $7,000 one. Well,
What
I
would the
remember it said
revaluation cost?
$7,117,
What would
but I don't recall what it was for.
that be?
Was the reval emergency, or was that already built in? Was Mr.
No, the
Walsh's
reval
question?
emergency was already built in. That continued, we paid that down 1/5 of a year. It factors into the amount of surplus we have versus how much we can use. But we didn't adopt that last year. We adopted that, I think, the year prior to that.
So the takeaway on this slide is, we're going to have about 1.3 million on a $45 million budget in a surplus, and if it doesn't get used, it obviously rolls into the ongoing surplus balance, which is likely what happened last year.
That's exactly
with
what
some
happened.
of the
Yes.
surplus.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody good on this page? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Janetzky. You know what? I did miss one thing. Could you go back? I saw a footnote at the bottom. We're at the full deferral now on school taxes. This is it. Because we've been sort of eating into that every year.
Well,
and-
we have been at the full 50% allowed
did that last
deferral
year?
the last couple of years.
Okay.
What we're assuming is, of course, school taxes have increased each year, so what we're assuming here is that we will again defer the increase that we have and utilize that deferred school
Okay.
taxes here.
We would be, though, not responsible of us if we didn't warn that, in the event that the state does come up with some sort of funding formula and the school district doesn't have to raise their taxes, then we could not anticipate that amount
That's a good
that
point.
we're anticipating this year. So we need to, I believe we need to start weaning ourselves off of this.
Mhm.
Okay, this is a summary of our appropriations. Salary and wages, $20.4 million represents a 9% increase and 45% of our budget. O&E, 13.8 million represents 13.2% of our 13.2% increase and 30.7% of our budget. Deferred charges, $701,000. Capital improvements, 1.3 million. Debt service, which is down from last year slightly at 3.3. And then there's our reserve on the bottom. Jeffrey, what is the reserve based on in terms of a collection rate that we're assuming?
I turned on. We had a 97.48% collection rate, which I think is down two percentage points. So it was 97.7, I believe, last year. And we have calculated the reserve for uncollected taxes at 95.98, which is the 1.5% differential that we have been using the last years.
So we are, to put this in layperson's terms, we expect that 5% of the taxes are going to go unpaid. That's the other way to express it, correct?
Yes.
And only 2.5% haven't been paid the last couple of years, because that was the
Yes.
number I remember.
Yes. Historically, Mr. Walsh, what we've been doing, we actually started at a 2% and over, we have transpired to a 1% differential. We look back at the 1989-1991 recession, and the single largest decrease in collection rate during that recession from one year to another was 2%. So by backing off the reserve for uncollected taxes, it doesn't give us any money, but if we hit another recession of that magnitude, we can survive 1 year without suffering a deficit or cash problems. We can close the current operating year without closing with a cash deficit or putting the town in a serious problem that's going to result in a big, huge, humongous tax increase. And that's exactly what happened in 1992 versus 1993 when the town closed their books with a $2 million cash deficit, and you have no choice at that point in time but to raise taxes $2 million.
I appreciate you anticipating.
So it was an idea that
Plain and safe.
we could survive a recession year without having the town run out of funds.
Very good.
Mayor, this chart is just a summary of our expenses.
Paul, could you go back, Tom, for 1 second?
Sure.
I just want to make sure, does anyone have any questions on this? So capital went from 350 last week, there was only 350,000 in capital last year?
That's the down payment money.
Okay, that's the down payment money.
Right,
And this year's down payment money is estimated to be 1.3.
Right, and this is where we're recommending we place the Fell settlement.
Say one more time?
This is where we recommend in capital reserves that we place the settlement for Fell, from
If-
Fell.
What we
Okay.
in fact have done is the 350 for down payment money, which is about what we need this year, and to place the $1 million windfall that we got from frequency engineering over in the capital fund, so we can use that for additional funding to either avoid debt or to use for additional down payment in the year's future. It's a one-time revenue. We're not going to realize that again. That it just doesn't seem sensible to build that into the tax rate. It's only a one-year thing. We're not going to see that next year. And it certainly makes more sense to take something like that, put it in the capital fund where we can use it to fund infrastructure improvements for the taxpayers with that basically found money.
And you have a slide that speaks to where that
Yes,
is
sir.
later? Okay.
I think this slide says a lot. Our salary and wages for 2007 are about $20.4 million. represents a 9% increase. This is by and large contractual. There's very little we can do to affect this. We do have some proposed new positions that we will demonstrate to you in 3 or 4 slides from now. But in terms of the impact that those new positions would have here is negligible. Non-controllable and other expenses increase here, and I will go over those line by line on the next slide. In terms of our controllable expenses, Mayor, we're actually proposing a decrease. Things that we can control, things that are within our, power to, be more efficient with, make better use of technology, are paying off, and there's a reduction in our controllable expenses. Okay, these are the items that we've indicated are non-controllable. Audit services, insurance, fire prevention, which is self-funding.
Could you go back to the insurance line? That's both property and casualty and health benefits?
I believe so.
Can we
Correct,
have the
Jeff?
distribution of what the property and casualty versus the medical is?
We'll have a chart for you at the next meeting.
Yes, it is on your worksheet.
It is, okay.
And I would like, Mr. Shinsky, if possible, I would like copies of this when we go through the budget, so I can take notes right on it, right next to it. Is that a possibility?
On this particular sheet
When you do any kind of,
of the PowerPoint.
In other words, can we get a hard
PowerPoint
copy? That's a great
I
point.
would love to have that.
Like our notes
so I
right
can
on
make notes right on it.
Sure.
Cross things out, maybe draw a face about you now and then with
I
a smile
understand.
or a frown. Okay?
Yeah.
Could you do that for me?
I will, and I'm sorry we don't have it. We sort of worked on it to the last minute.
It's
And,
okay, just for the future. It's about progress, not perfection.
We'll put it in your mailbox tomorrow. Okay. So fire prevention, condo reimbursement services, public service, electric and gas, other utilities, waste disposal cost, that's contractual, statutory, which refers to Social Security, our pension requirements for police and municipal employees.
Excuse me.
Bless you, man.
Okay.
Thank you.
And does council have any questions about these items?
The solid waste disposal cost, is that referring to dumping fees from the recycling center?
It's half dumping fees, recycling center, and half the recycling contract.
Okay, so it's both of those.
Do I have any comments on this? I mean, that seems like a steep hit in insurance, 30%.
Yeah.
What is going on with that 30% raise in insurance?
Jeff, is there a page what page can we?
Yeah,
turn
it's
to?
on page J10. A good hunk of that, because since we're comparing budget to budget, and we're showing an $800,000 increase, $200,000 of that is money that we had to add as an emergency. So our actual cost in '06 was $266,000 higher than what was originally budgeted, so.
Okay, but still that would be like a 20% hit, would it not be, Jeffrey?
Yes.
We're taking a 60% increase in workers' comp?
Let's see, we budgeted for, that was the one we had the emergency. We budgeted 480, and that's what we're calculating the increase on.
Okay.
But we had an emergency, we actually ended up with expending 668. So, unfortunately, doing the difference and doing the percentages, we're doing it from the original budget
Okay.
and not the budget as Chris. So there's $260,000 increase that is in here that looks like an increase this year by comparing to the original budget.
Can we get from, unless the council disagrees, I'd like to have Mr. Migden give us the renewal breakdown. We haven't seen it, and I haven't seen it yet, from
I have.
from the health insurance. We have that detailed renewal exhibit.
I do have, yes, I have the.
If you could
know.
circulate a copy of that to the council, I think we'd like to break that down a little bit further. Because it was my recollection, on the second year, we had I was under the impression, and my memory was going quick, but didn't we have some parameters around a not to exceed? Why am I thinking it was 13?
I don't recall
This is what, the health benefits?
Yeah.
Well, a product of this health benefits is the shifting the loss to some of the grants. It isn't entirely increased. This
Oh.
is where this line item has increased because other line items have disappeared, and the COPS grant is done and expired, and the benefits paid out of the COPS grant we still have the police officers there, but now we can't
Now we're
budget for
picking up
that
the
outside
expenses.
gap. We much budget for it here.
Is that the cops in schools, the
COPS
the
in schools
officer that's
grant,
in
yes.
Howell High School?
There was COPS in Schools grant was done 2 years ago. We had 4 officers on COPS universal hiring. That grant finished last year.
Yeah, and those are non-renewable, unfortunately.
Yes. You know, so
Can we
part
get,
part of that,
Of the 28.5, I'm just interested, I had a recollection that we had a not to exceed 13 in the second year in a health plan. I just,
Can you talk into the mic, please?
Yeah, it did not exceed the 13%, I can tell you that.
it's probably an allocation factor between other departments, and I can probably
Yeah, if
work
I'm not
that out.
mistaken, it was like 6 or 8.
Okay, well, I'm making a note, Mayor, that we'll need
yeah,
to
I
give
think we
you a
want to see
report
that renewal backup
on
that gives
hospitalization.
us the explanation behind the data.
And Mr. Filiaccio, I would like this spelled out, please. I understand, like, COPS grant is no longer there, so you have to put that into the number. But I'd like to see it spelled out.
Okay.
This is why it went from A to Z. These are all the reasons.
Yeah.
Have we put that out, have you contacted other brokers to see about putting in for other bids?
Yeah, we've spoken to other brokers, and we're still working on a RFQ.
We will have an RFQ before time's up to appoint somebody. Like in other words, when is the contract expire, the current one? I think by the end of the year, right?
I believe it's mid-year, like July. Or
Right, it's a mid-year.
Which contract, the health plan?
A broker.
No, for broker. It's a mid-year. In other words, all the work was done for this year, long before council-appointed professionals. So all that work was done. So
You're a good man. I
mid-year,
wish my clients thought that way.
right, so mid-year, whoever the broker is going to start doing the work. Our goal is to have an RFQ out there, so council's in a position to award a contract by July to a broker.
I want this to be stayed on top of, okay?
Yes, and Helene's been developing specs, getting samples from other communities, running them by our attorney, so we are working on it.
Mrs. Dalton, you have a question?
2 questions. The RFQ for a broker, that's for a broker, or that's for proposals for the insurance?
No, for the broker, and then the broker will get proposals for the insurance.
So we hire a broker?
The
Based-
broker is actually, there is no public funds that pay the broker. The broker, well, the mayor probably knows better than I.
Yeah, we are paying the cost of our broker. Inside the cost of our health insurance premium is, no, in a very direct way. If we did not have a broker, and Mr. Chernyatsky in a former life, instead of being a planner, was an insurance consultant, we might not have a broker. We'd have him do it for us, and as a result of that, we would see a reduction in our health benefit premium because we wouldn't be paying someone to fulfill that function. So, and in fact, the commission that our brokers get it's public information. It's built into the program, and there's a set schedule. But the appropriate way, at least in my judgment, to do it is you want to have a professional represent us, like we have an attorney, an engineer, a planner, For a number of this size, we all know we need some outside representation that's an expert at it. And what they should do, we should decide who we believe is best suited to fulfill that role. And then they should be charged with negotiating the renewal with the carrier and/or marketing the plan. And you probably want to market the plan, at least once every 3 years. But every year, whoever I'm certain Mr. Migden does this now, but whoever the insurance consultant is, they should be beating the hell out of these numbers. They should be doing their own underwriting analysis. They should be going back to the carriers. We're looking at claims runs, loss ratios, high claimants, et cetera, et cetera. But in my experience, the way they do that process is you want to go out for a request for proposal for a broker, hire that person, and then work with him or her, let's hire a she, my daughter would be proud, but hire a she or he to go through that process on our behalf. And our renewal actually, just by coincidence, is February, is it not? And that was kind of bizarre when we left the state health benefits program. So our renewal is actually February, so this budget probably includes 11/12ths of whatever the increase is. So realistically, we should probably be, if we're going to keep that renewal date, we should probably go out to bid for a broker in November. Because what has to happen is, if in fact the broker needs to market the business, if you will, and in the event that there needed to be a change in carrier and what have you, they need a sufficient amount of lead time to do the analysis, market the plan, do all the things that they should be doing. Now, I don't know, I don't remember why we didn't RFP this one. We probably should have. The only thing I can think of is we did have a 2-year rate arrangement with the health plan, which was my recollection, that not to exceed percentage in the second year. But we should still go out to bid now.
Yeah.
That answer your question?
Yes. Then my other question was, if I can just understand on J10, where we have the line for hospitalization, and we've got 2005 final, 2006 approved, 2006 final, 2006 expended encumbered, 2007 department request. So the one that says 2005 final, that's what we spent, or that's what was budgeted?
That's what was budgeted.
That's the budget number for 2005.
Right,
2000.
2006.
No, I said 2005 final. That's what we spent or what we budgeted?
That's what we spent.
That's what we spent. And the one that says 2006 final, that's what we spent?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
What we spent in 2006 is
Sorry.
next to that.
That's
2006 final,
encumbered.
2006 expended and encumbered.
The question
Okay.
is, what's the difference between approved and final then, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, because we amended it, correct?
We did a transfer, yes.
We had to do a transfer.
I'm trying to understand what our budget number was for 2006.
When we did this point last year,
You
it was
approved
1.9.
was our budget.
It was, then during the year, we needed to amend the budget, correct, Jeff?
Yes, we needed, in November, during our budget transfers, we transferred additional money into this line item.
Right, so really it should
So-
read 2006 final amended budget.
Okay. So the 2006 final amended budget number was 2.54
Yes.
million. And the department request right now is 2.544 million. Right?
Correct.
Well, maybe I'm naive, but I don't understand. We're talking about a 28% increase. Looks like almost no increase to me, if we're talking
But
about real numbers.
Well, this is what we were talking about with the other one, the increase that's calculated here, and that's what we discussed at the last budget meeting. Increase that's calculated here, and the percentage is based on the original budget as approved by the council last year at this time,
Without the,
without the transfers.
without the transfers or the, yeah,
Without the benefit of knowing what the actual cost was.
Right.
correct.
'Cause
But
this is like a
certainly,
$5,000
certainly,
increase.
that was what we were specific about, how do we calculate this? As far as the dollar difference, the percentage difference, do we calculate on expended, on our final, or on our beginning? And it was discussed that we would compare it, adopted budget to proposed budget.
I mean, I think what the people want to know, and what I need to know, is what did we spend last year, and what are we going to spend this year?
fair point.
Well,
Okay,
my-
our
if I
actual
can-
expenditures were 2.2 million. They're shown there for last year.
So the
Councilwoman
line that
Dalton.
says expended encumbered is what we really spent.
Correct,
So we spent 2.2 and we're going to 2.5.
right. But the purpose of showing it to you, for purposes of preparing a budget, is to say, if we're going to approve a budget document and not amend it, you need to realize that you can't work off what we approved last year.
That I understand.
But in terms of what the final document that the public will see, the polished one, those things will be demonstrated more accurately, as you described it.
Okay?
I think we definitely want to see that information from Mr. Mignon right away.
We'll work on that tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay. Any more on this slide?
Anyone else on this slide? Okay.
Debt service is going down, is that because we're paying off some of the things that are there? Do we expect debt service to be going down over the next 3-4 years, Jeffrey?
No, I think it's going to stay stable with a little, couple fluctuations up and down. There is some additional debt that we either have to go out on a short-term basis to issue as we progress along with the capital programs. Certainly, there is nothing now other than the one outstanding bond. And naturally, every time we make a principal payment on that, the debt service will decrease because we're paying less interest. But no, I foresee the next, probably later this year, early next year, we may have to issue some bond anticipation notes and pay some additional interest. So I foresee, say that over the next 4 years, that debt service will fluctuate slightly, but will probably stay about even, but about the same.
Okay.
Okay,
Sorry,
Mr.
Mayor.
Jansky.
Next, okay. The next is a summary of our salary and wages for the year. Our regular salary and wages meaning means public works, office staff, administrative staff is 7.7, or for the year with an increase of 5.69%. This reflects some new hires that we're proposing. I'll show you on the next slide. Shows an increase in seasonal help and in what we need to pay to attract seasonal help. General overtime staying the same, actually going down very slightly. Overtime for public works is going down slightly. Regular police salary and wages, which is contractual, going up 11.9%.
If I can just point one thing out, on the public works overtime, the decrease on that was because we didn't have any snow this year.
The Councilwoman Showmaker requested a detailed breakdown, and I'll show you on where we spent public works overtime. And I'll show you the new positions, but that would require $142,000 for a half year. Okay. We currently have 270, actually it's 269 full-time employees. We're down one clerical employee, and we're not proposing to replace that. What we are calling for in this budget is 2 new police officers, 2 new laborers, and changing a half-time MIS employee to a full-time employee. We think these are critical investments that need to be made. Again, the thing on the right shows you how we allocate our human resources, and the asterisks indicate where some studies suggest, a study we had done almost 2 years ago suggests where we could bolster our staff. Okay, this is a summary of DPW overtime. 50% of the overtime was on snow removal. 28% was on, because we had to balance, we were able to use a good portion of our overtime to get the leaves up quickly this year, and I think we did it to great success. tree damage where the crew gets called out at night, road emergencies, emergency repairs that need to be made, building repairs, things happen at the library, police department, court, here at night, or on weekends need to be addressed. Special projects, that would include things like North Howell Little League maybe, or something along those lines where we need to be there for deliveries or put in extra hours in terms of preparing the specs. Special events, 4th of July, Christmas tree lighting, Howell Day, and vehicle recovery is 6%. That's where a police vehicle gets stuck, a flat tire, breaks down, needs to be towed in the middle of the night. So that is the breakdown of overtime in Public Works.
I would have thought with that big ice storm we had, tree damage would have been a lot higher because there were trees down all over this town.
That was this was 2006.
Oh, okay.
Only 2006. Okay, any questions about DPW overtime? It's actually, when I look at the history of it, these numbers have dropped significantly, I mean dramatically, over the past 4 or 5 years in terms of total overtime for DPW. I'm not sure why that is, but case.
Gradually?
I wouldn't say gradually. I think about 3 years ago it was quite a bit, right?
Yeah, there was part of the whole budget control and budget cuts. We did curtail it rather drastically.
That was a good part. What'd you say?
We're talking about DPW overtime. That was
It went down,
curtailed.
right?
Yeah.
Painfully.
Okay, moving into capital improvements. The engineering department is proposing ongoing with the street overlay program, curb and sidewalk improvements, various intersection improvements, stormwater management items which are required, but it doesn't call for a car wash this year. Improvements to Lake Louise and Echo Lake, the Manasquan River cleanup, and engineering equipment and copiers. This basically is the two items that Mr. Nunziato showed pictures of that we need to generate maps and do files for the various boards and the council and whoever else needs it.
Let me stop Mr. Chinesky right there.
Sure.
Is it the pleasure of the council, do you want Mr. Chinesky to go through all this, and then we have to come back and make final decisions? Or as it relates to capital at least, do you want to take a minute and get quick straw consensus on in, out, in, or what have you? What's the pleasure of the council? You want to take it all in and then go back?
Yeah.
Everyone agree? I mean, I agree as well, but I didn't want to make that.
Mayor, I only have about 24 slides altogether, so we're...
I thought you said 24 more.
No, so we're about halfway through.
If it pleases council too, we can introduce with a proposed capital budget, and you can amend that upon adoption. That's not a big deal to amend.
It's the non-capital piece.
It's the non-capital pieces that are a little bit harder, and you got to listen to me read that resolution twice. So certainly this is an area that I don't think we really have to rush you through and say you got to make a decision by next week. Certainly, it would be nice if we could finalize this and put this in place. But this is an area where you could probably take a little bit more time and look at, and maybe have some discussions with departments if you need it.
I have a couple of questions on this one.
Sure.
Street overlay, this is the continuation of the paving plan based on the road conditions analysis, right?
Yes.
Curbs and sidewalks.
Okay. And curbs and sidewalks how are we determining who gets curbs and sidewalks repaired?
Well, there isn't a plan, but what we do is really based on degradation. You know, where there's a real crying need, the department decides that on an annual basis. But I don't believe there is a plan in place that prioritizes these.
There's a two-tier, if I can recall from Bill Nunziato, there's two-tier effect. One of them is related to road paving, and the need to repair curves prior to putting in new pavement where a need be. And the other aspect of the curves and sidewalks is the shade tree issues that we have throughout town with lifting the sidewalks and everything.
And on intersection improvements, can we see the list of what intersections we intend to improve? I keep thinking of Easy Street and Newton's Corner. And this isn't a criticism of anybody, but I've been told every year for 4 years, this is the year it's going to get fixed. And I drive by it, and it still doesn't look fixed. It looks paved, but you get a heavy rain, and it's still a problem.
Doesn't even have to be heavy, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. Okay.
Parks and Recreation, requesting new meeting room furniture. If you folks have attended a meeting in that conference room lately, it's not very professional. Movie equipment to provide movies in the park. Rotary tiller, various mowers, which we're going to pull out of the basin account. Bonham Phase 3, 4, and 5, which is the bulk of this request at $2.9 million. The Civic Center message board, actually these are two electronic displays that we want to install as part of the Pop Warner Pedestrian Safety Improvement Program. We're going to put one, we're proposing to put one, just as you cross the railroad track coming towards the municipal building. Right before the road turns, you'd be able to see it, and it'd be a variable message display board. It says, please slow down. Could also announce things, when we're doing leaf pickup, bulk pickup, whatever. And the other one would be down the street, sort of near the park basketball courts, as you're coming in the other direction. But it makes, it's put on our own property, so it's not a county improvement. It doesn't have to meet any DOT sign requirements on a county's part. It's set back, but the letters will be big enough and bright enough to warn a motorist that they are entering a heavy pedestrian area when those events are ongoing. That board can be controlled electronically from a desktop. And these are great things when to get messages out, and I think it'll really get the attention of motorists. Pickup and plow for parks, and a mason dump, which we can also fund out of the basin account.
And when you mean fund out of the basin account, is that 3.1 net the 99 and the 31?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Many of these items, Mayor, are going to be required to service the various parks. Bonham, we have to start mowing that this year, and to service Freewood Acres Park as well.
Let me clarify something with the mayor. Mayor, that is not net.
Okay.
Those items are in the 3.1.
Yeah, but when we set aside what the capital is, if they're coming out of the basin account, that's not going to impact tax
That's not going to
rate.
impact any debt
So
approval or anything.
so the 3.1 actually needs to be reduced to reflect.
Well, they need to be reflected as far as your budget, documenting your budget, your capital budget.
Right.
But the source of funding that we'll indicate as far as where the money are coming from, that will not come from debt or from cash funds within the capital.
When we figure out the debt service that impacts the municipal tax rate, it's net.
It's none of them.
Those
When we
numbers.
figure out the debt, yes, absolutely.
Mayor,
And hold on one second. I think Deputy Mayor had a question about what the current account balance is in that basin, in the basin fund. Do you have any sense? He's got it.
while he's looking, let me just explain this too. When you adopt a bond ordinance, which you have to do for all your capital projects, you itemize the things that you want. Unless we put it in a capital budget, then we have to go and amend the capital budget if it's not there. So you get a few bites of this apple.
Mhm.
You have to authorize a specific bond to go and do a specific project. All we would do here is make sure we have enough for a down payment, or 5%. We have that 5%, whether you approve any of these things or not, based on the FEL and what we've added to it over the years in the capital reserve.
Okay.
So while Jeffrey's looking, I'll keep going.
Sure.
Under vehicles. The senior bus has 180,000 miles on it. We have 2 buses. This one spends a great deal of time in the shop. Of all the capital improvement projects that senior services had, they're all gone except for this. This is the one thing that Carol begged and pleaded, please don't let them take this out. I need this. We have a growing membership, and it's important to us. Under 5, I'm sorry, I didn't specify. This is for police vehicles. Chief requested 10. We're actually recommending 5 because we want to participate in the Monmouth County Improvement Authority's bond, which they only do every other year. And Jeff, you can talk about the benefits of doing that when you...
They're 42,000 apiece.
All right. Having a little glitch here in the computer system, but I believe it's about $800,000 in the basin
fund.
account. Now, what were you talking about, Mr. Chinesky? I'm sorry.
Filiaccio, sometime in the next week or so, I would just like to know where it was like 3 years ago, because I remember the big discussion, okay? I'd like to know where it was 3 years ago, where it is now,
Okay.
okay? Just in the next week or so, nothing imminent.
Okay. Jeff, MCIA and getting 10 police vehicles as opposed to 5. Want to explain why we want to do that?
Yes. The Monmouth County Improvement Authority allows us to buy equipment through their pooled loan program. It's only available through Monmouth County, the Monmouth County Improvement Authority every other year, every odd-numbered year. It's the county guarantees the bond, so we get an automatic AAA rating. We get the lowest interest rate going. We pool all of the capital needs with the rest of the towns within Monmouth County, so we get really cheap borrowing from Monmouth County Improvement Authority. I'm actually proposing this for all our equipment this year, since it's much cheaper than what we can borrow. In our last pooled loan program 2 years ago, I think we're netting about 2.7% interest rate.
You can't touch that.
So, yeah. One of the benefits we get out of that, Monmouth County Improvement Authority can, since it's technically a lease purchase arrangement, can finance police cars for us that we normally couldn't do on our own with the capital laws. We could not finance the purchase of police cars. As a matter of fact, we could not purchase police cars outside cap. They would have to be a function of the police budget. So by taking a 2-year contingent, since it's 2 years, it's every other year with Monmouth County Improvement Authority, and putting the police cars in here and paying for them over a 2-year period, so we don't end up building up debt, we're actually able to buy the police cars outside cap. Since they don't come in till fall, by the time we get done with capital, we have to wait. We'll have to wait for the 08 models before we can get them. We actually will get our 07 contingency late in the year, and we'll get our 08 contingency early in the year, so we can get, the cars replaced pretty close to where they have to be replaced. And we have done this now with the pooled loan program. I think this is the 3rd time, maybe the 4th time that we've done, the 3rd time that we've done this when it's been available, and it is a very cost-effective way to get all our equipment, and we're able to include the police cars in with it.
So this cheaper money will not be available next year, is that correct, sir?
It is not. It is only done every other year with the county.
I understand. So why, I'm just, next year, are we going to have to go and buy 5 to 7 more?
The intent is no. In other years, other than last year, we have not.
What we've historically done, not to suggest that this is right, is that we've bought more police vehicles in the years where the County Improvement Authority afforded us the year to do it, and in the years when they didn't, we did not buy them.
Right.
And one year, maybe it was 2 years ago, we bought like 10 cars, didn't we?
Yes.
We bought a
Yes, we
decent
bought
number
10.
of vehicles.
Actually,
but
it was
like 10 cars.
14.
14.
14
You know,
cars, yes.
to take advantage of it, thinking that that really would get us caught up and up to speed.
Well, that's what I want to know. If we're going to have to buy 5 more next year, and this money's not going to be available, why would we not buy them now when we
Well,
have the extra money the one time from?
Well, what we've done here, the chief has asked for 5 this year. My recommendation for $105,000. My recommendation has budget 10
Yeah, he's
for
doing
210. That's, I think that's what you're saying.
It's the
I
opposite.
couldn't understand that from reading that.
Okay,
You
the chief,
recommended 10 instead of 5?
that's right, the 2-year
Fair enough,
allotment.
sir. I wish that spelled it out. I was
Alright.
looking up there, did not know that. I thought 10 were recommended, and we were getting 5. I didn't know we were buying
No.
10.
The chief of police has requested 5. I've recommended 10 to get the
And that's
2-year
within
allotment.
Which is great.
Now, Jeff, do we know what the models of these cars are? Do we know if they're gonna be the ones that they use now, or are they shifting over to the Dodgers? Because I know there was a big
I would imagine,
controversy in the tires.
what we traditionally have done is we bought off state contract, because that has been relatively competitive price. I mean, we're, right now, the Crown Vics, we've been picking up for $21,000, a police package. So I think we would have to wait and see, as far as late '07 for the '08 models, what the state contract has on it.
Right, because I know, didn't we just have something last week for a Dodge Durango, or was it a couple of weeks ago, Dodge Durango and a Dodge Charger for the police department? I just wondered if that's the way we were going now.
Not uniformly across the department, no.
Right, because somebody had, I can't remember who it was, that told me that Chevy was getting out of the police car business, and now Dodge was taking it all over.
Chevy's out of police car business.
All right, so, and Ford was leaving too.
All right, yeah, I know, you know, there wasn't, in our analysis here, we didn't get a model specification. The chief asked for $105,000 for 5 cars. I don't know what cars he was proposing. So, you know, I
The
think
reason I'm asking is-
that's going to have to be done by resolution of the governing body when the time comes to award the contract for those cars.
The only reason I was asking is because if they are switching models, then we're gonna have to send guys to school to work on these new models, because they've been working on Fords or Chevys, and now a whole new, manufacturer comes out, now we gotta think about that for the DPW.
That's why I do stuff like that.
Okay,
And
MIS, requesting $11,000 for an off-site archival service, $11,000 for that service, and 42 new computers to start staging some replacements. Public Works,
Can we go back on the computers? Are those acquisitions or are they leases?
acquisitions, I believe, right, Jeff?
I'll defer to the experts, but with the rapidly changing technology, have we explored lease agreements instead for equipment, knowing that every time you turn around, there's a new device? And, I just asked that sort of rhetorically. I don't know
Yeah,
if it
I've had
makes
that
sense
discussion
ROI-wise.
with Dave Banowski. We actually acquired the laptops, the initial 8 laptops that we bought for council meetings and the sideboard here, on lease purchase. It wasn't a wonderful experience. It wasn't that bad. One of the things we have right now, this year, of course, those computers are available for the MCI. We can buy their equipment. We can buy them through the MCIA too. And I don't think at least has an interest factor built into it. And I don't think they can beat a 2% or 3% interest rate.
No.
Mayor, just the vast majority of our users aren't power users. They're just basically Word users.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're not buying souped-up computers at all those.
No, Mayor, we're looking to replace Windows 2000 computers. And we're just trying to be proactive because they are going to become maintenance problems, and they're probably 6 to 7 years old now. And, you know, so I think we get the service out of the desktops.
Public Works.
Just want to ask you 1 second, Mr. Chinesky. We just need a motion and a second to obviously extend our meeting time, and let me recommend, can you finish your piece by 11:30, Mr. Chinesky?
Yes.
All right, I'd ask for a motion and a second to extend the meeting to 11:30.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion, we need a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any remarks?
Move forward.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, good. The ayes have it. I think I was the only aye.
Okay.
Sorry.
This vastly trimmed down Public Works request, a bay lift for the large vehicles, so we don't. Let me just step back too and say that the instructions were, I want the investments to have an impact on the street. I want it to be felt in the services. So I don't want to see proposals for things that aren't going to translate to that. So let's focus on building public support for the things we do. All right, so a mechanic's bay lift, that gets the plows out on the road instead of jacking them up by hand. An in-vehicle brake lathe, that allows us to bring a machine right to the axle and fix a brake. Dump trucks. We were adding more roads every year, you know, from new developments. Aerial tree trimming.
Can I
trees
stop
aren't
you right
getting
there?
younger.
What do we use the average dump truck? What is the average dump truck, other than we're doing tree trimmings and we're putting the stuff in the back of the truck, but for a 5 cubic yard dump truck, what does that truck experience on a day in and day out basis?
Well, when we do the tree trimming, I mean, these things get loaded down tremendously.
Right.
I would tell you, most recently, we were hauling tons and tons of soil from Bonham over to the yard, and then from the yard over to Memorial Drive. You know, we were doing those sort of projects where we required as many vehicles as we had. They'll be very instrumental when we start doing the lake dredging. The dumps are also used for salt, to mount salt spreaders on, which is critical.
Are we buying the Cadillac and dump trucks, or can we get something just as efficient for a lesser price?
Jeff, do we buy that off state contract too, or we got to bid?
No, I don't believe they're available in state contract. We do a competitive bid on them.
Right, and council awards that bid. We write specifications for chassis, you know, types of engines that are compatible with what we have in stock and what we're trained for. And the mechanics review the specs. They actually, you know, are behind drafting them. They approve them before we go out.
Okay.
Okay.
You know, I also review my cars before I buy them. But it doesn't mean that I have to have a Cadillac Escalade, Don Smith, you know, as my pickup truck. I could buy something just as efficient for less money. I buy American.
Right.
You know, and that's the only reason I'm asking. You know, can we get something just as efficient that isn't quite as costly?
Tom, if
I
I remember that when the DPW came, yeah, we could buy something that's cheaper, but that's exactly what it is. It's cheaper. I think the last 4 years, the council's been buying the dump truck. They're stainless steel beds instead of just steel. We're gonna pay more now, but we're not gonna have to replace them as often. The frames are different. We're saving money on them now because of what those fellows did with the salt system over there. So we're not spending 15 grand per truck on the sodium chloride system. So yeah, we're spending more at the outset, but it's gonna last longer.
I know this has come up, and I've made just a note to myself that you know, the members from the public have questions about who we're awarding trucks to and why. So in my mind, next time we award that contract, the DPW director is going to be here to answer the questions.
Mrs. Dalton, you have a comment?
My question on some of these items, like the dump trucks and the aerial tree trimming truck is one that sticks out immediately. Are those the types of equipment that we can consider pursuing shared arrangements with other towns? I mean, is an aerial tree trimming truck something that we're going to use full-time, nonstop, or is that something that we could share with the borough of Farmingdale or the township of Wall?
I would tell you that coming from a small municipality, you can certainly share these things, but you also have to share the laborer, meaning our trained employees go with the equipment. There's a liability there for one thing. I would want to point out to the council that we only have one operable street sweeper, and that's been the case for a number of years. And there are streets that don't get swept for 3 or 4 years.
I didn't ask about the street sweeper being shared.
No.
I knew better.
Okay. Buildings and grounds. We're looking for some air monitoring equipment. This is something that we do as part of a POSHA requirement. It costs us $400 a quarter to do it. There's a in-ground telephone wire leading to the Public and Works building that needs to be replaced, and it's the cause of a lot of poor phone service into that building. We absolutely this year need to replace the revenue building roof. This almost made it last year. We cut it in the last minute. I still had listed the old OEM building issue, which we need to, I guess, have a further discussion on. The engineering, planning, construction office, we need to start replacing the window air conditioner units and to seal the windows or to seal the areas where we're installing these units. There's huge gaps. The building just needs to be better controlled in terms of the environmental quality in there. Library and the PAL building, we're going to upgrade the lighting fixtures. I think that's the last phase of our lighting upgrade. There's a 2-year payback on that investment. And we are in need of improving the front steps at the library and police department as per a safety audit or risk management audit.
Can I go back under buildings and grounds? Is the $500,000 that a down payment was allocated for, which was the investigatory money for a new municipal complex?
The drawings.
Right, the drawings, the architect, getting the planning going. We did bond for that. So that $500,000 was down paid for, and that money is out there, is it not?
It was provided for by ordinance. I don't know if we've bonded for it yet, 'cause since we haven't spent it.
Okay.
I don't pre-bond a lot of items because I have an IRS obligation not to borrow too far in advance. So it has been provided for. You probably have authorized debt to be issued for that, but the debt has not been issued since no work has been done on it.
That's one of the things we're going to thoroughly go into, Mayor, with the Finance Review Committee. Good. That's one of the things we're going to do.
Yeah,
I have 2 questions here real quick. One, with the upgraded lighting, I've spoken to you about that, Mr. Chinesky, and was this something we did internally? Did we bring an outside energy consultant to look at it and help us make decisions there?
On the upgrade?
This is an ongoing program. We've done it in this building and several of the other buildings. We actually do it in conjunction with JCP&L. They come in and do the analysis. There are rebates involved from JCP&L for doing it. We actually, I think this building, EPC building, we actually had a contractor come in and do it because of the magnitude and the size of it. I do believe the senior center, the buildings and grounds personnel did it on their own. It wasn't as extensive of his job. It does involve new reflectors, new ballast, and new energy efficient lights.
I understand. I would just, one of the things I've seen some building owners use that I know is Just bring in an outside energy consultant, that's all. They don't cost no money. They're trying to get some business, and they do it by analyzing what you have, giving you recommendations, and then it's up to them.
If I may, I believe that the initial initiation came from the EDC consultant, Barry Lefkowitz, didn't it, Jeffrey, way back when? And it was that's what started the process.
I don't recall where it originally came from.
It's been a while
It
back.
certainly is, we did a calculation that certainly is just a saving in electricity with these lights being on all day long. We would save that money in just a little over 2 years. And then beyond that, it's a home run.
Plus,
We're
yes.
continuing to save with the electricity costs.
I'm all for it. I'm just asking if we use an outside consulting service to help us there, that's all.
We actually use a free service in JCP&L because they do analyze it, they do certify the lights we put in, and in conjunction with that, we then do get a rebate from JCP&L. So we actually get all that service done for free from the power company.
The other thing I wanted to ask about with that is, we had spoken in the past up here about doing something with the former chief of police and Mayor Harvey Morrell over there at the police building.
Yes.
Could we incorporate some of that into what we need to do in fixing the front? It'd be nice to have a little bit of a plan there.
Okay. We are working on a plan for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Next.
Okay, and just other items, we have to show in the budget the 140 we were spending on an ambulance, but you won't see that in any sort of capital ordinance. Proposing buying into a reverse 911 code red system that's currently in place that we can subscribe to. Everyone understand what that is, reverse 911? If we need to call a neighborhood, say there's a pull down or something like that, can easily do that.
Right, Tom, I know I had brought up the issue of that being the perfect opportunity for a shared service with the Board of Ed. If there's something going on in the Board of Ed, they can also utilize that. And taking a look at having Farmingdale go in and do that with us as well, because it would be much harder for them to afford something like that on their own, but they can take a small portion of the space that's available and do that. But I want to make sure that it's not just for the police department. The Board of Ed absolutely can get in there if they have an outbreak of something in the school or there's an issue at a school. You know, and I know I had spoken to Ron Sanizak about that, and he said the Board of Ed is absolutely interested in it.
Okay. We saw where towns were using that very successfully during the outages. This is the total value of what was proposed was about 7.2 million. I think last year's Jeffrey was nearly 5.5 million. Okay, I just wanted to show you this chart, and I thought you would find it of great interest. In 1990, the township's total population, or per the census, was 38,000 residents. The debt that the township had at that time was $12.5 million. On a per capita basis, that was $321. If you go to the CPI adjuster and you just plug in the numbers in the current year, the value of that debt was $505. This included things like the library, the police department. Okay, so now we go to the latest population projection we have for 2005, which is 54,000 residents. And I'm convinced it's higher than that now in 2007. Our debt is $30.2 million. Divide that by resident, by the residents, and it's $556 per resident. Okay? So there's a dollar for dollar kind of comparison. But what's really interesting is that 65% of that 556, or $361 is being serviced by our open space tax for open space debt.
Interesting.
So, you know, I know, like, we issue this debt, we talk about $7 million for improvements, but what does it really mean in constant dollars for a growing municipality?
That's an interesting number.
Okay, so all in all, if we take our capital, operating, all those things, what this budget proposes is a 4-cent increase. If we were to translate last year's tax rate onto the new valuation, last year would have been 0.299. What we're proposing is 0.69. I know there was a great deal of concern about the letter that we sent out with respect to the valuation. Based on the information we now do have about the schools, the county, regional school district, the overall bill would be approximately 1.95.
Just for the record, that letter that whoever told you there was concern, I didn't get one call, I didn't get one email. I had people actually thank me that that letter went out, so I don't know where the source that it got back to you that there was a problem, but people I spoke to were very happy that they had an opportunity to state their case. I think it was a good thing.
Oh, from Wolf and, right.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you're referring to,
Oh,
correct?
I'm
The
sorry.
letter?
No, I apologize. I'm
Oh.
referring to the letter that the residents received from the reval company.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it said, you know, if we
Okay.
just did some basic
Okay.
estimates under the new rate, you'd be at about 1.9, I think is what they said, right?
Actually, I think they said 1.87.
1.87.
The number?
Okay. And so based on our new valuations, the average assessed home is $350,000. And for the local purpose tax, this budget that we're showing you tonight would represent a $133.65 increase per year.
From last year.
Could you go back? That
Yeah.
chart below is based on the updated number?
Correct. This
No.
It-
Yes, the pie chart.
Yeah.
pie is the
So
same as the beginning,
That's
yes.
based on a 4-cent increase.
This pie chart,
Yes.
yes.
Okay. Really? Because it looks like the chart right from the beginning, which I thought was the current one.
There's the reserve for 4 cents, 4%.
Yeah, but the beginning one was
The same chart.
the same chart.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the beginning one was last year's.
I think what you did was you showed us what it was in the beginning, and then you were gonna explain to us how you got there.
Right.
Can I ask, Mr. Filiaccio, on a home assessed at $350,000, what would have been their taxes last year? Municipal? Would it have been, 1,400? Because we're coming up with $133.65 per year. I understand that. What would the municipal portion have been last year?
Hold on.
Can I go to the next chart and have him
Yes.
get back to you this? Because I think you'll find this equally interesting. If you take our budget per capita here, take the 1991 budget and population, divide it, you get $515 per resident. Adjusted for inflation, $809 per resident. Compare that to today, and again, I'm convinced that this number here is higher, and you get $828 per resident. If I just rounded this off to 55, it would be $818. So just to show the actual purchasing power of our budget has remained fairly steady over the years. But what's really interesting is if you take the portion of the budget that we go to the residents with and say, well, you pay for this with your local purpose taxes, just that for inflation, the gap grows. Where's my thing? The gap grows. And I think that is a direct reflection of the decrease in state support and aid for municipalities. because we rely more and more on local property taxes as a portion of our revenue.
Over the course of the past 5 years.
Okay.
The state just keeps taking more and more, we know.
To answer your question, Mr. Walsh, it was $808 last year on a home assessed at the same basis.
$808 increase or?
No,
eight-
he asked me how
taxes?
much the taxes were on the same size home last
350,000.
year. It would be $808.
The local purpose tax.
Local purpose tax.
Okay.
Okay. You saw this chart already where I explained where we fit in Monmouth County from 2006. And you saw that out of 566 municipalities, we had we were 107 on the bottom in terms of what we charge per capita in municipal purpose taxes, and 127 in terms of overall budget. But here's really what I wanted to point out to you, which is a new chart. Howell Township is the 32nd most populated municipality out of 566. We are the third largest in land area, and of the 32, we're the 10th fastest growing between 2000 and 2003. So if you want to know why this town is a challenge, that's why. Okay. If you take the budget per capita out of those 32 most populated towns, and let's, comparing apples to some apples here, instead of just all in a county. If you take the 32 most populated towns, we're the 7th lowest in per capita budget. $800 per each resident compared to Newark, which is $2,303, let's say. Okay, and that's, well, I'm missing one more chart, which would have showed you if we took the local purpose taxes per capita and divided it by a population on this chart, the only town that would spend less in local purpose taxes per resident is the city of Camden.
Can you get us that chart?
Yes.
Okay. That's based on '06.
Yes. So that's my presentation.
What was the you had, it looked like there was another picture you showed us real quick.
This one?
That, yeah.
Oh, well, now what happens in our town is we're not that bad compared to many others, but we're not that great either. What happens is that local residents feel the pinch because that tax burden falls on them to a great extent. 83% of our revenue tax revenue comes from residential properties, and only 12% comes from commercial properties. If you were to compare that, for example, to Lakewood, which is 21% commercial, Wall, 20% commercial, Middletown, 14%, Dover, 15%, 12% of our revenue is commercial. And I know this is not an argument for now, but we're also not diversified in the area of revenue from apartments, which is a separate line item. I think the only apartments we have are payment comes in through a pilot for affordable housing.
So that's it?
Yes.
All right, what's the pleasure of the council in terms of finalizing, making any amendments or modifications? I think the first thing, Mr. Cherniatsky, can we all get a printed copy of this slide deck right away?
Yes, sir.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I would like for us to be able to get a copy of the slide presentation, maybe review it again on our own time, and then maybe we have a quick recap when we come in on our next meeting. And because I don't know if any of us are prepared. Are you prepared to go through that tonight? To make
No, I
cuts?
don't think
I'm
tonight
not, I'd like to go through it in my own time, if I may.
I will tell you, this is the 5th budget I've been through.
It's been,
This is spectacular. I mean, I'm not happy with the outcome just yet. So
Thank you.
put that aside, because you don't control that. I've sat through 5 of these. Mrs. Showmaker has sat through 7, whatever it is, whatever the number is. I mean, this should be in the best practices book. You have done, truly, you've made this very understandable. And I think in terms of having to make the decisions, you've laid it all out like I've never seen anywhere. And I attend public meetings for my other life. I've seen other managers do this. I've never seen anything like this.
Oh, thank you.
This is really fantastic. You're to be commended, you and your team, because I know that you certainly have a supporting cast.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so we'll get the slide deck. I mean, I know that the deputy mayor is not going to be here Tuesday, so I don't know that, we're certainly not going to be in a position to finalize it without his participation.
Can we change this?
Well, we have a regular council meeting on Tuesday, right? We have a regular meeting.
We do. We have no ordinances. We didn't anticipate doing that, so we can follow up on the detailed questions. We will get the deputy mayor all the questions that he asked and that council asked. We'll get, when are you leaving?
It's
Or-
privileged and
I'm
confidential.
sorry.
You're not
If we get it to you by Monday, would that suffice?
Huh?
Monday.
I'll talk to you offline when you're leaving.
What are you, comatose? You all
I
right?
just don't feel like answering.
All right, so you'll talk to the deputy mayor offline.
Yes.
We'll all get copies of this. Maybe the four of us can have some preliminary discussion, solicit
Certainly,
final
you do
feedback.
have the opportunity to amend in June at public hearing and adoption, and you do have the opportunity to amend them. If we're not prepared to at least introduce and get the legal status of the budget going by the 15th, then we have no other meeting scheduled in May. We may have to ask for a special meeting for introduction of the budget.
Would it be appropriate for the deputy mayor to meet with Tom offline and give him a consensus of what he wants to see and not want to see, and then Tom can relay that to us, or you can put it in writing, so that we at least know, where we're all going, so we can collectively make, a decision.
I think we need to discuss this, and I happen to see him right now a little bit more than my wife, so, no. I've been spending too much time with him, okay? I mean, I'll be glad to, I'll talk with some about it, but I think it's something we need to discuss. Some of the things up there I know we have questions about, and,
Well, then I think we probably should prepare then, on the outside chance that if we don't introduce on the 15th, if we're not going to make policy decisions next week, which sounds like it's impractical, then we're going to have to be prepared to come on the 15th and talk about it and make final decisions, which means, in spite of the fact that no one wants another meeting, but this is important. So we're probably going to have another meeting where we can introduce. And if you look at that, the next Tuesday, if you will, after the 15th, you're looking at May 22nd. Is that too late?
Well, the only comment I would make is with meeting on the 15th, you have a May 21st date on the school budget.
Okay.
So I don't know whether finalizing the school budget on the 15th is reasonably expected either. I think you may end up having to have a special meeting on the 21st, since that's the last opportunity you have to do the school budget. And that
What
might
if-
be a date.
What day
What
is
if
that?
we were to,
Monday.
What day is that? The 20th?
That's a Monday.
The
It's a
21st.
Monday.
what if we were to change our next Tuesday meeting has already been advertised, correct?
You're right, and it's a school government
Yeah.
day.
That's right, forget it.
But there's plenty of time to advertise, if that was your question.
Well, I forgot it's Student Government Day that day.
And right now, it's advertised for Middle School South. Are we changing that?
It's going to be
Yes, we
here.
talked with Bruce about that today.
Well,
Because I
what-
said, we could have changed it, would anyone have objected to changing the meeting to Wednesday when Mr. Walsh would be in town?
And unfortunately, Wednesday, the 9th, is a night that I couldn't be here.
Okay.
We actually attempted to change the Student Government Day because we were slated to have the 2A plan hearing in the middle school, and we were not able to do that because of the scheduling with the school system, so.
Okay.
Why don't we just tentatively, is Monday the 21st a problem for anyone? Monday the 21st?
I can't think now.
Does that seem all right?
It
I'll
sounds
be
like
up
we're,
north. I can
we're
make
gonna
it by
need-
8 o'clock on Monday the 21st. I wouldn't want to take a chance of coming from all the way up north.
sure.
No, I won't be out till about 6:30 with traffic.
So do you want to say, let's schedule a meeting for 8 PM on Monday, the 21st? And we may or may not have to finalize the school board budget that night. And at a minimum, we know that we'll finalize this budget that night, and we won't have anything else on.
Okay.
Is that acceptable, everybody?
It's fine with me.
Okay,
Okay, well, thank you for,
thank you. Is there anything else on the budget?
And when will we have that information on the insurance?
we're gonna start working on it first thing in the morning, and
Tell Mr.
You'll
Bigden
pro-
what I've told somebody else. We can have that in a couple of minutes.
right. Well, but we have about 7 or 8
Yeah.
things you've requested, so we're gonna get on that tomorrow morning.
There's only one other thing I just want to read to or share with the council. An organization called Prevention First wrote to me petitioning all the mayors in the state to pass an ordinance requiring that beer kegs be tagged. And so I'd like to have this presented to the manager so that we could consider passing an ordinance making it a requirement in Howell so that any beer keg that is sold by a licensed liquor establishment would have to be tagged. And it's really, according to the explanation, I think Belmar passed it, when the police get to a situation where there's underage minors that are drinking and they see there's a beer keg, they oftentimes are unable to track down who was the person that actually went out and bought that beer keg for the kids. So this new law requires them to be tagged, and then they can determine who the person was that actually purchased the alcohol for the underage drinkers. So,
Absolutely.
so I'm going to just pass this around, and if you, maybe your office can get it back to the council, and we could workshop that.
Might suggest tagging and sampling.
After a meeting like tonight. All right, is there any other business we need to talk about, Mr. Chinyetsky?
No, sir.
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned. Safe travels.
Oh, I meant to point out, buildings and grounds.
For any general comments.
Okay.
So moved, Mayor.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor to reconstitute the meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Anyone from the public who'd like to entertain or make any comment, this public meeting, please feel free to do so. Anyone who'd like to make any comments?
Hey.
All right, seeing that there's no one who has any public comments to offer, the time is 11:45. I'm going to close the public portion. We will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mayor.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Safe travels.
I thought we just passed an ordinance